Grief never changes. The Commonwealth, on the other hand, grows and adapts. Some folks try to rebuild the world that once was, but others take their inspiration from more eclectic sources. Take the settlement of Sanitary Hills. What was once a sleepy neighborhood with families and dreams turned into a strong community modeled after what first settlers called the Old West. Sure, the original settlers couldn't read too well, hence the name, and it took 100 years or so, but it turned itself into a stable community with all the essentials: shelter, food, water, a graveyard, a church, and of course, a house of ill repute. Things went well until something came out of the depths of the earth, so destructive it could only be from the time before. The sole survivor of Vault 111 surprised everyone when they emerged from their enforced slumber. Newcomers were always welcome in Sanitary, but the sole survivor had been through the unimaginable loss of a child, a spouse, and 200 years. In a shack by the river, the sole survivor lived in self-imposed isolation, hiding from the changes to their old neighborhood and the world. Meanwhile, the petty squabbles between Sour Gums, the local preacher, and Madam Hot Lips, the proprietress of the House of Carnal Comfort. It was a classic story of good versus evil, though which side was which largely depends on which side you were on. He preaching and yelling profanities at anyone in earshot, and she largely ignoring the tirade as she profited off the debauchery of her clientele. For the sole survivor, however, hiding could only last so long. When the local preacher marched a procession of believers to the doorstep of the sole survivor's shack, intent on spreading the good word of his faith, they were met with a rage kindled by grief and delivered with hot lead. With the believers dead, the sole survivor burned the church, then spread their rage with even-handed efficiency to the bawdy house and its denizens, filling Sanitary's toilet bowl cemetery as if it were an obsession. From then on, Sanitary's remaining citizens steered clear of the sole survivor, while treating the unhinged resident as the new power in town. Rage, however, eventually runs out. Perhaps it was due to some sort of revenge the sole survivor found in the Commonwealth, or maybe these sorts of things just run their course. Either way, Sanitary's new leaders set to building the community back up. As mayor, the sole survivors set to building the community into a flourishing town, free of the preacher's persecution and the madam's exploitation. As sheriff, they kept those that would tear apart Sanitary Hills at bay. The sole survivor would never forget what they lost, because some wounds never heal. They found a peace of sorts in Sanitary, but they still had their private moments when grief threatened to tear them down again. Because grief never changes.